as she harshly pushed away the small hand my son held out to her. The sound echoed loudly through the quiet living room that New Year's Day. "I don't see why I should give New Year's money to someone else's child," Nancy said with a look of disgust. She stared at us like we were something dirty. Beside me, my son's tiny shoulders trembled. Instinctively, I reached for his hand, gently rubbing it, trying to comfort him. I never wanted my son to feel this kind of pain, but in that moment, I had no power to protect him or change our situation. "What a sweet little grandson you have this year," Nancy cooed in a sickeningly sweet tone, directed not at my child, but at my sister-in-law's kids. "I've put something extra special in your red envelopes." Her words cut through the air like shards of ice, while my son and I sat there, ignored, as if we didn't even exist. Every year on this day, we were treated the same way. But this year it hurt more than ever. Mike had been so excited to visit Grandma's house. His eyes would light up every time he talked about it. He couldn't wait to get his New Year's gift and make a special memory to start the year. Watching his pure, innocent excitement crumble in front of me was like watching a house of cards collapse. I sat in silence, gripping the edge of the rug so tightly my nails dug into the fabric. The physical pain was easier to bear than the emotional agony. "Mom, why?" he asked in a small voice that broke the silence, as heavy tears rolled down his cheeks. Seeing him like that shattered my heart. Then I felt his tiny, trembling hand tug at my sleeve. That feeling brought tears to my eyes, but I swallowed them down, fighting to stay strong. I didn't want to cry in front of my son. I wanted to be a strong mother for him. I couldn't take it anymore. Gently stroking Mike's head, I stood up and said, "Let's go home." My voice sounded unfamiliar to me, distant. "You're leaving already?" "We're just about to start the family dinner," Nancy said, feigning surprise. At that moment, my phone rang. I looked at the name on the screen and felt the emotions I had been holding back begin to surge. Jan and I had known each other since childhood. We went to elementary school together, but lost touch when I switched to a private high school. We reconnected years later at a class reunion. At first, I didn't recognize him. He looked so different, but his kind personality was still the same, bringing back memories of our youth. To be honest, he wasn't exactly my type physically, but his unwavering devotion eventually won me over. Our marriage grew distant over time. He became uninterested in parenting Mike. I still remember how excited he was when I told him I was pregnant. He cried with joy. But now, he's barely involved. Lately, he's been acting strange. He used to barely touch his phone, but now he carries it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. He claims he's working overtime because of a tight schedule, but he comes home later than ever. A woman's intuition rarely lies, and I can't shake the feeling that he's having an affair. Jan's never been good at keeping secrets, so if my suspicions are right, I know evidence will surface eventually. Until then, I've decided not to confront him or snoop around. I don't want to tip him off if he really is hiding something. If he is cheating, I suspect the root of it may lie in emotional wounds from his childhood. He was raised by a single mom and always felt immense pressure to meet her expectations. He once told me he worked hard just so she wouldn't have to worry. He tried to get high-paying jobs to ease her financial burden, but after many rejections, he settled for his current position. I remember how surprised he was when we discussed our incomes before marriage. Mine was significantly higher. Since then, we've avoided talking about money, but I've quietly been covering the financial support he sends to his mother. While that's relieved some pressure for him, I fear it's also added to his stress that might now be surfacing in unhealthy ways. One night, while I was cooking dinner, I got a call from my sister-in-law Rachel. I couldn't answer right away, but she kept calling until I picked up. "Mom and I are going on a trip for 3 days tomorrow," she said casually. "Can you take care of my son? I'll drop him off at your place at 9 a.m. Thanks in advance." Rachel had been living with my mother-in-law since her divorce, which, according to rumors, was due to her cheating. I'd always thought she was selfish, but I kept things civil for Mike's sake. Still, this request was too much. I had plans to have lunch with friends the next day, and watching someone else's kid for 3 days seemed completely unreasonable. Besides, why wasn't she taking her own son on the trip? I politely declined. After hanging up, a pang of guilt hit me, but I reminded myself I had made the right decision. Not long after, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother-in-law. "What's this I hear about you refusing to watch Rachel's son?" she said accusingly. "You know we're going on a trip. How can you say no to watching a 6-year-old? Her tone was harsh, and I felt the urge to match it, but I held back. From the beginning of my marriage, she had been cold toward me. Every time I voiced a disagreement, she retaliated. I'm convinced she sees me as the woman who stole her son. No matter how reasonable I tried to be, she always sighed with disdain and sided with Jan or Rachel. I decided arguing was pointless, so I calmly told her I'd talk to Jan about it and ended the call. That night, Jan came home after midnight. I was exhausted, but I stayed up waiting for him. "Your mom and Rachel called today," I explained as he took off his jacket. "They want me to watch Rachel's son for 3 days while they're on a trip, but I already have plans tomorrow." I wasn't expecting him to agree with me. He'd been distant lately. Still, I didn't think he'd be this unreasonable. His response left me speechless. "Just take both kids with you. I'm sure your friends won't mind." Seriously? Watching one kid was already a big enough responsibility, but bringing 2 to lunch with friends? That was completely absurd. This is unreasonable, Jan. It's a huge imposition. And why can't Rachel just take her own kid with her? He just shrugged. It would have been worse to say no to Mom and Rachel. "You should respect their wishes," John said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did John truly not see how unfair he was being? Or did he just not care? Feeling defeated, I texted my friends to let them know I'd be bringing 2 kids to lunch. No one replied, probably already asleep since it was past midnight. With great reluctance, I messaged Rachel, telling her I'd take care of her son. Her response made my blood boil. "Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I was going to drop him off with you either way." The audacity was unbelievable. As I sat down, trying to relax, I noticed a notification pop up on John's phone. He was in the shower, so I glanced at the screen. The sender's name made my stomach turn, Rachel. But it wasn't his sister. It was my ex-husband's younger sister. I opened the message. "Today was amazing. I can't wait to see you again tomorrow." My heart sank. I'd been right all along. John was having an affair. His carelessness in leaving his phone unlocked was almost surreal, like he didn't even care if I found out. And while a part of me felt vindicated, actually seeing the evidence tore me apart. I decided not to say anything for now. I needed more proof before confronting him. That night, I barely slept. Since discovering the infidelity, my nights had been restless, and my health was starting to suffer. But I couldn't afford to break down. Mick needed me. The next morning, Rachel arrived with her son as planned. She didn't even bother to apologize for the massive inconvenience. Later that day, while cleaning John's study, I found some suspicious documents. Among them was an insurance policy for Mick, one I'd signed myself. But the paperwork suggested John was trying to cancel it without my knowledge. While organizing the documents, a photo slipped out from between 2 books. It was a picture of John with my ex-husband's sister, taken just 6 months earlier. They looked like a couple on vacation, relaxed, smiling, happy. It stung to realize John hadn't taken me on a trip in years. That discovery filled me with a mix of rage and sorrow. But I kept calm. I needed more evidence before taking action. I wasn't the kind of woman to suffer in silence. In the weeks that followed, I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into John's activities. What he uncovered was far worse than I had imagined. Not only was John cheating, but he was also siphoning money from Mick's insurance policy to fund an illegal business. On top of that, the investigator found evidence of fraud and embezzlement at John's workplace, linked to his mistress's father, a prominent businessman. It was a web of lies and corruption that left me speechless, but it also gave me the strength I needed to act. A month later, I stood in front of a room full of journalists, ready to reveal the truth. The tension in the air was thick. John, his mistress, her father, and my mother-in-law were all present, tense and pale. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice shaky at first. But I quickly regained my composure. I laid out the timeline and presented the evidence, photos, documents, recordings, each piece more damning than the last. The reporters were stunned. Pens flew across notebooks as questions began pouring in. Was this company involved in tax evasion? Did the mistress's father enable these crimes? Were family members aware of John's misconduct? John, his lover, and her father tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. By the end of the press conference, their reputations were in ruins. That night, the story dominated the news. Friends and acquaintances reached out to show support and express their shock at the scale of the scandal. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I felt supported. The fallout was swift and devastating. The mistress's father's company faced intense investigations and quickly lost both its credibility and market value, eventually filing for bankruptcy. My mother-in-law, once the queen bee of the neighborhood, became the subject of gossip and disdain. John was fired without severance and left drowning in over 500,000 pesos of debt. His mistress abandoned him, leaving him alone and penniless. Rachel lost custody of her son and, from what I heard, was working unstable jobs just to stay afloat. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding my life. Thanks to a former boss, I landed a job in the consulting department of his firm. It was challenging but rewarding, completely opposite from the isolation and constant criticism I'd endured as a housewife. Mick adjusted beautifully to his new school. His cheerful spirit became my daily joy. One sunny spring morning, I watched him walk to school with his brand-new backpack. Pride welled up in me. We'd been through so much, but we were still moving forward. Months later, the divorce was finalized. John was barred from contacting either me or Mick. The last image he had of his son was during a school ceremony, a bittersweet memory that marked his fall from grace. His mistress disappeared from the public eye, and her father's once-respected name became a cautionary tale of greed and corruption. Our life returned to a peaceful rhythm. Every day, I reminded myself of the strength it took to get here. One afternoon, as I picked Mick up from school, his laughter rang through the playground. He ran to me with a radiant smile. "Mom, I had the best day ever!" he exclaimed with excitement. His happiness was my greatest reward. We had fought for our future, and finally we'd found it. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them. We had weathered the storm and come out stronger. Our story was one of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son.